Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the evening of December 24th, 2023 in the United States, the morning of December 25th, 2023 in the Middle East. I will start by noting that tomorrow, on Monday, December 25th, I will be traveling. I will not upload an update. If there are any major developments, I do put them on my Twitter account, that is at Alon Burstein. Otherwise, I will be back in 2 days. Starting with the hostage situation, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad delegation, headed by the leader of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Ziad Nahaleh, arrived in Egypt to discuss the possible hostage deal, and they are joining Hamas leadership abroad, Ismail Haniyeh, and his deputies that are also in Egypt as well. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad stated that the delegation will, I'm quoting, discuss the ways to end the Israeli aggression, and Ziad Nahaleh himself also stated, "We are coming to Cairo with a clear position. Stop the war, complete withdrawal from Gaza, and exchange on the principle of everyone for everyone, i.e. the release of all Israeli hostages and hostages in general held in the Gaza Strip, for all Palestinian prisoners held in Israel." That refers to upwards of 8,300 Palestinian prisoners that are currently held in Israeli jails. Relating to other avenues for a deal, the Saudi Asharak network and also the Qatari Al Arabi Al Jadid reported that Egypt is developing a plan for both hostage release as well as a staged plan to end the war. According to the plan, it is going to have 3 phases. The first will be a 2 to 3 week truce and Israeli release of 120 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for 40 hostages, primarily women, children, and sick, who will be released from the Gaza Strip. After that, there will be a continued truce in which female soldiers and the bodies of hostages will be exchanged for more Palestinian prisoners, but more importantly, in this phase, there will be internal Palestinian negotiations to establish a technocratic government, i.e. a government that is not affiliated with either one of the factions, that will govern both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip simultaneously. And in the third phase, it will be a complete ceasefire and a general hostage exchange. Unclear if general hostage exchange means all hostages in exchange for all Palestinian prisoners. Unclear about that. Establishing a technocratic government, a complete Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, and release of, as I said, all hostages and possibly all Palestinian prisoners. The Asharak network claimed that the plan has been proposed to Hamas and Hamas accepted it. Contrary to this, Al-Akhbar, which is a news outlet in Lebanon that is very affiliated with Hezbollah, reported that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad responded to the Egyptian plan by stating that their terms have been stated, only complete ceasefire and the release of all Palestinian prisoners in exchange for all hostages, otherwise they are not negotiating anything else. Amidst this, Gaza Report Network stated that Egyptian Minister of Intelligence Abbas Kamal spoke directly to Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, in the last several days, in a secure line from Egyptian Rafah. The report stated that Kamal wanted to assess Sinwar's position on the deal. This is critically important for several reasons. Abbas Kamal is known to have very good relations both with Israel and with Yahya Sinwar, and in the past, he has been the one to relay messages between the sides and achieve ceasefires. That does not mean that right now he's trying to achieve a ceasefire, but the fact that there is an open line of communication between Abbas Kamal, the Minister of Intelligence in Egypt, and Yahya Sinwar may prove to be critical in any event, whether it is a ceasefire, whether it is possible negotiations. It also signals the balance of power in the Hamas leadership. While in the past, the external leadership, Ismail Haniyeh, Khalid Mashal, and others, were the ones who were in charge, and the leadership in Gaza would listen to them, this signals a change in balance that has been reported already since the war began, whereby the leadership in Gaza is becoming more and more important at the expense of the leadership abroad. Responding to all this, reports in Israel suggested that the government is not taking the Egyptian proposal seriously, that it does not seem realistic at all, and that as far as Israel is concerned, it is still waiting for Hamas to deliver its response to Qatar regarding the last round of negotiations that Israel proposed to Qatar. As I stated yesterday, in Israel the opinions are split, whether it be optimistic or pessimistic. The Mossad believes that Qatar and Egypt can pressure Hamas in order to move on to the next phase, whereas other elements in the security establishment think that Yahya Sinwar and Hamas right now are not interested in moving on to the next phase. Either way, the answer is supposed to be delivered to Qatar within the next couple of days. Moving on to the ongoing fighting within the Gaza Strip, there were barrages of rockets and mortars sent from the Gaza Strip, primarily targeting the southern parts of Israel. Rockets targeted the areas of Netiv Asara, Yad Mordechai, and in the areas of Lachish, Otzem, Yad Natan, also Be'eri, Nahal Oz, and Alumim. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, as in the last several days, there's fighting going on across the entire Gaza Strip from north to south. In the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, with Jabalia refugee camp, the IDF reported that it has completed the operation to dismantle and destroy Hamas's northern underground command headquarters in Jabalia. The network, according to the IDF, is vast and includes 2 stories of tunnels, one 10 meters underground and one dozens deeper. It includes vast arrays of tunnels and rooms, weapons manufacturing areas, and the entire network also went underneath hospitals hospitals and schools, and it had an entrance leading to the leader of Hamas in the north, Ahmed Andur, who was assassinated several weeks ago. IDF also noted that the last time it had managed to recover the bodies of hostages, those 5 bodies were located in this tunnel network. This is apparently the most expansive tunnel network in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. The IDF is now reporting that it has completed its process of dismantling it. Moving on to other parts in Gaza City, there was a targeted raid carried out in the Sheikh Radwan area in Gaza City itself. After intensive gun battle, monumental weapons caches were uncovered in the area, including in schools and mosques around the Sheikh Radwan area. Hundreds of guns, grenades, RPGs, and different explosives devices were found, as well as the IDF showed suicide belts that some of them were also in children's size were found amidst the different weapons caches. Moving on to the central parts of the Gaza Strip, in the Nusirat refugee camp, there were substantial battles reported along the Nusirat or Netzarim corridor. This is the corridor that divides, as far as the IDF is concerned, between the northern parts of the Gaza Strip and the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. According to different reports, the IDF has been working to expand this corridor, i.e. to destroy any facilities or infrastructure that is around the corridor in order to create a greater buffer zone, and intensive battles were reported throughout this area. In addition, in the center of the Gaza Strip, in the El Maghazi refugee camp, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza reported that over 70 Palestinians were killed in a major IDF bombardment throughout a residential area in this refugee camp. The reports also stated that ambulances were not able to reach the area as a result of the bombings. Responding to this, the IDF said that it is looking into the claim. It is unclear what was being targeted in that bombing. Moving on to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, in Han Yunis, there's major activity reported in the heart of the city, with substantial confrontations and gun battles. The IDF reportedly is beginning more targeted operations throughout the city, and this includes primarily raids against different houses, according to different intelligence, and going house to house and building to building in order to try to hunt down either Hamas operatives, uncover weapons caches, possibly look for intelligence related to hostages, things like that. Amidst this, the Wall Street Journal today reported, quoting a senior IDF official, it stated that it will take the IDF months to achieve control in Han Yunis as it has achieved in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. According to the report, which stated that the official is also a top-ranking commander of Gazan forces in the IDF, Hamas in Han Yunis has moved into an attrition style of fighting rather than face-to-face confrontations trying to stop the IDF, in which 2 to 5 attackers are emerging each time either from a building, an alleyway, or a tunnel, and then retreating, trying to draw the IDF into ambushes, but mostly trying to, quote-unquote, harass the IDF rather than trying to confront it in the battlefield and actually stop its invasion. According to the report, this may be associated with the fact that the IDF is now moving to more targeted operations rather than trying to take over the entire city quickly. Unclear at this time. Moving on to Rafah in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, a video was released today showing Hamas police officers shooting and killing Palestinians attempting to raid an aid truck that had entered the Tel Sultan refugee camp in the northern parts of Rafah. In response to this, the police station in Rafah was set on fire by a mob. Other news related to the Gaza Strip, after yesterday it was reported that the IDF estimates between 7,000 and 9,000 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters had been killed. Today the number was clarified. IDF General Eliezer Toledano, who is the head of the IDF strategy, appeared before the Israeli government, and he stated that the IDF assessment is that since the war began, 7,860 terrorists have been killed. He did not distinguish between Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Presumably that means from both those organizations. The IDF is reporting that it carried out 200 bombings and air raids in the last 24 hours. Regarding casualties, 10 IDF soldiers reported killed in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers that have been killed since the ground invasion began to 154, and 1,998 are reported injured. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting 166 Palestinians were killed in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians that the Health Ministry has reported were killed since the war began to 20,424 in the Gaza Strip. In addition to this, over 54,000 are reported injured, and I remind everyone there's also reportedly between 8,000 and 10,000 people still buried under the rubble in the different parts of the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, like yesterday, I remind everyone that due to Christmas and the fact that it is the weekend, there are very, very few reporters that are actually reporting from the areas of both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and thus the reports of the humanitarian situation are very, very minimal. According to what could be assessed today from the humanitarian situation, the UN is estimating that 80% of the 2.2 million Gazans are currently internally displaced. Most of these are right now concentrated in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, specifically in Rafah, and more are coming as they are evacuating the central parts, primarily Deir el-Balach. Several days ago, the IDF called upon people in Nusirat, El Burej, and parts of Deir el-Balach to start moving into Deir el-Balach. However, A lot of these are not staying there. They are moving down south to Rafah, which is currently the only area where there is a defined humanitarian zone that stretches across a more substantial territory. Regarding the entrance of aid trucks, the Palestinian Crossing Authority reported that 123 aid trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies entered in the last 24 hours. It did not mention through which crossings this entered, so again, we do not know if the Kerem Shalom crossing is in fact up and running after that one day that it was reported that it was active. Moving on to the West Bank, again, very little information coming out as a result of the fact that there is very little news being reported. According to different activists on the ground stating what is happening, substantial IDF activity was seen in the El Jalama area near Jenin. Other activity was reported also in Balata near Nablus, in the El Tawan area also Nablus, Dir Amma refugee camp in Ramallah, and Kafin near Tulkarem. However, again, there is no report about what actually happened in those areas. It's only reports from Palestinians on the ground that are tweeting and stating that there is substantial IDF activity in their areas. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there were substantial rockets and missiles sent from Lebanon targeting both the northern Galilee and the western Galilee of Israel. Rockets targeted the area of Avivim, where there was a direct hit in a house, Margaliot, where there were 2 direct hits from different RPG fires, one of them landing near a kindergarten, Ramon Naftali and Araba Ramsha in the western Galilee, as well as other border incidents. Regarding IDF activity in southern Lebanon, in addition to retaliations to each one of these fires, the IDF reported substantial initiated series of attacks against Hezbollah infrastructure. Initiated attacks means that the IDF is not just responding to rocket fire, but is actually initiating some sort of targeted attacks. These targeted Hezbollah infrastructure, launching sites at different military compounds, as well as Hezbollah units in Ita Shabab village. There were also other major air attacks reported in the village of Markaba, Yarun, and Marun Aras, all in southern Lebanon. In addition, it was reported today by the Northern Division Commander of the IDF that the IDF has undertaken a substantive operation to locate Hezbollah tunnels in the northern parts of Israel. So there's been a lot of criticism in Israel that Israel is not actually taking an active stance to stop a Hezbollah-style attack of October 7th, and instead is only trying to right now deter Hezbollah from doing that, but is not actually being active in stopping it. Responding to this criticism, the head of the Northern Command in Israel stated that the IDF has in the last couple of weeks undertaken a major operation to locate and destroy any attack tunnels that Hezbollah may have built entering into Israel underground. Moving on to some of the regional developments, following the establishment of the International Maritime Force, Maersk, which is one of the world's largest shipping companies and one of the first that announced that it would stop sailing through the Red Sea as a result of Houthi attacks, today announced that it is going to again begin sailing through the Red Sea. However, this is conditional on developments. Other news, Spain announced it is not going to join the International Maritime Force that the United States has set up. Yemeni Coast Guard, of a faction that opposes the Houthis in Yemen, stated that it took over 2 weapons ships that were destined for the Houthis. It displayed substantive weaponry that was located on the ships, however, did not state where the ships originated from. In other news, the New York Times today reported that the United States has not decided yet if it is going to initiate attacks against the Houthis, or if it is going to just use the maritime force in order to try to forestall or ward off or deter any Houthi attacks, but not actually take the war into Yemeni territory itself. According to the report, one of the factors that is in consideration is a very tenuous ceasefire that is being negotiated between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia. The Houthis and Saudi Arabia have been at war since 2014. It's been one of the most bloodiest wars, led to hundreds of thousands of deaths and mass starvation within Yemen. They have been negotiating a ceasefire in the last year. It has not been signed yet, however, unofficially. They are already in a ceasefire, and that is one of the things that is really scaring the United States in terms of a regional escalation, that these ceasefire talks may break down. So according to the report in the New York Times, that is one of the considerations. On the news, the Houthis reported that a U.S. ship launched missiles against a patrol plane of theirs that was patrolling different areas of the Red Sea. This is unconfirmed by any other reports. Moving on to some of the political and general trends in the last 24 hours, there is substantial internal political turmoil being reported in Israel after statements were made by different ministers, including Minister of Economy Nir Barkat as well as Minister of National Defense Itamar Ben-Gvir, both of them chastising the military and the IDF for not carrying out enough bombing campaigns throughout the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, and thereby endangering IDF soldiers because they're not getting as much air support as they did in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. The statements were condemned by Minister Gantz and other ministers within the government. Responding to this also, IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari stated that ground forces are receiving complete air support just as much as they did up north. However, the different operational considerations sometimes lead to less use of aerial bombings. And the Wall Street Journal, the source that it quoted, also said that there's no change in strategy in Han Yunis compared to what there was in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. There are other reports of frictions within the War Cabinet, and the Minister Gantz is considering leaving the War Cabinet amidst rumors in Israel about a possible election that will be sometime in 2020. 2024. Other news, the expanded cabinet in Israel is due to convene on Tuesday amidst discussions of the hostage deal, as well as the U.S. demand that Israel move to low-intensity fighting already at the start of 2024, i.e. already next week. Other news, following the CNN report yesterday about Israel's one-ton bombings that it carried out during the first 6 weeks of the war, Washington Post today reported on its own analysis of Israel's bombing campaigns during the first 2 months of the war. According to the report, between October 7th and November 27th, Israel dropped over 29,000 bombs from the air, primarily in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, some of these weighing over 900 kilos. According to the report, 37,379 buildings were damaged in these bombings, of which over 10,000 are completely destroyed. The report also analyzed different satellite images and compared them to different conflicts that have occurred in the 21st century. According to the report, such carnage as has occurred primarily in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, but also in the southern parts, is almost twice as much as the damage done by the Syrian regime in how there have been 3 years of bombing, and over 50% more carnage than the international campaign against ISIS in Mosul, and over 2.5 times more the carnage than has occurred in Raqqa. Importantly, the report also stated what is previously reported by the Wall Street Journal, that the U.S. intelligence estimates between 40 to 45% of these bombs were what's considered not guided bombs, i.e. not missiles guided by GPS, but rather dumb bombs, bombs that are simply dropped from the sky, targeting an area. Moving on to speculations regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, in the government meeting today, General Eliezer Toledano of the IDF emphasized to the government that the war is going to take months, specifically referring to Han Yunis, but also the entirety of the Gaza Strip. He stated, and I'm quoting, "We will have to economize our armaments, but the end goal is the destruction of Hamas, and that will require vast strategic thinking." In that government meeting, Prime Minister Netanyahu again reiterated that despite international pressure, Israel is going to make its own decisions on how to run the war. He is relating to the fact that there have been more and more rumors that the United States is demanding that as of the beginning of the new year, i.e. next week already, Israel begin to move to low-intensity fighting and change the way it is running the war. All this is coming amidst the reports on the Egyptian plans as well, and it is important also to put the Egyptian plan regarding what is going to happen in the Gaza Strip within the perspective that I reported yesterday, that the United States is hoping that both Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the Gulf countries are all going to be involved in the future of the Gaza Strip, and thus the Egyptian plan, while as far as Israel is concerned, is very far-fetched. Possibly it is going to seem appealing to others in the United States. Unclear at this time. That is my report for the last 24 hours. As I stated at the beginning, I will not be here tomorrow. If there are any major developments, I will update them on my Twitter account. Otherwise, I will be back on Tuesday.